So thank you. I'll do my best to make this time worth your while. So thanks for hanging with me. As mentioned, in the same company and focusing in the same industry, we've seen. I've been through 2 leveraged buyouts, getting bought and sold by a Fortune 10 company. And now kind of in a private equity stage. So there are other ways, and this is another proof that drug delivery technology platforms can really generate value for investors. So what I'd like to share today is kind of our look ahead at what the drug delivery industry needs to do to survive and thrive as we go forward. About 80% of our revenues come from drug delivery platforms, and we really need to decide how we make capital allocation decisions, where we invest, what technologies we invest in. So this comes through our strategy process, our strategic planning process, and this is kind of where we see where we think the industry would benefit from, and where we certainly are intending to go. The commercial, 80% of our revenues from drug delivery. We've touched more than half of the new medical entities approved by the FDA in the last 8 years. So that's really the basis for comment. Also, as mentioned, we've recently formed an Applied Drug Delivery Institute that we're hoping will be a collaboration vehicle to really promote the effective use of advanced delivery platforms to produce better treatments. We're really hoping to collaborate between companies with academia, and certainly to try to bring some payer insights back into our side of the world a little bit more directly. To move fairly quickly, I think we want to. We have a patient problem, and our patient problem is really delivering better outcomes. A lot of this is driven by the payer pressures that we've talked about a number of times today, and certainly the acceleration of the single payer pressures on single payers in Europe from European economic challenges have really impacted launches. We just talked about launches. Our own analysis of launches over the last 5 years show that 2 out of 3 underperformed pre-launch expectations by at least 20%. So versus the inverse of that a decade ago. So it's pretty well aligned. A lot of that is because the products that we're seeing launched are in general not delivering sufficient differentiation for payers to cover and patients to continue to adhere to. So this is one symptom of outcomes improvement we think is adherence. For every 100 scripts written, about 19 scripts don't, and this is average for a chronic drug, so it's very different for acute drugs. Still adherence problems, but 19 scripts don't reach the pharmacy. This is due to cost, first and foremost, but is also due to often due to patients not understanding the drug, so health literacy, health understanding. And the third most cited factor is because they're concerned about side effects and concerned about taking the drug. So there's at least one element of that, certainly in mitigating side effects, simplifying complex regimens that drug delivery can play a significant role in. 5 more patients don't actually pick up the scripts that make it to the pharmacy. This is pretty much more forgetting, I think most of the research would say, than anything else. The next, this is more of an average, but a number of studies put non-responders to chronic medications at anywhere between 20 and 40%. One recent study said it could be as high as 50%. Genomic subtypes and other things are clearly becoming more understood. But just using a 20% non-response or suboptimal response rate This is, again, something that targeting can play a role in, but also some of this response rate is because we have, in the last 10 years, we have about 100 drugs that have food effects that have launched. That's something that, for many drugs, is fixable, but they weren't. So that sometimes leads to higher interpatient variability as well. This is the part that really I'm quite passionate about, is non-adherence and the drivers of that. For an average chronic med, we're seeing at least 40% non-adherence. Patients struggle taking drugs with complex regimens. So cost certainly comes into play for certain products as well. After 12 months, we're seeing 70% typical drop-off rates. So that means only 1 in 6 patients are taking drugs and getting the optimal therapeutic effect on average for a chronic drug. This, if you're familiar with quality standards or other things, this is about the equivalent of 1 sigma. So this is incredibly poor outcomes from a product design standpoint. We think that we together as an industry can do better. And we're certainly not the only people that think this. Paul Leeson, who I believe is still a medicinal chemist for senior medicinal chemist for AstraZeneca in the UK, has written a whole series of articles over the last decade looking at trends in compounds under development, and has concluded most recently, I think in the Nature article referenced here, that the industry is still taking suboptimal compounds from discovery into development, that we're not thinking about PK/PD design improvements for patients early enough in the process. Coming from a different end of the spectrum, and this is something I fully embrace. Some Idea Pharma's consultants, they actually have interesting blog posts that I'd recommend you follow. But the point I want to emphasize is talking that every single choice you make about your product can impact a patient outcome. Now, this is our own assessment and triangulation between a physician perspective, a pharmacist perspective, a payer perspective, and a pharmacology perspective. We look at the 125 products approved in the last 4 years, and think that 6 in 10 of those left money on the table from an outcomes optimization standpoint. Could be absorption, could be complex regimens that could be fixed. I'm not talking about routes of administration changes or anything like that, but even within the same route of administration, it may or may not be coincidence that 2/3 of the product launches also underperform expectations. So we think that a comprehensive approach to outcomes design, using the same kind of principles of design thinking that have kind of swept other industries, of comprehensive design early on in the process, can really make a difference. Certainly starting with a target therapeutic profile, but also, and some of the things that you would normally expect, but also bringing some patient-enabled thinking earlier into the process, as well as even operational focus. So 2 examples here. One, we've certainly talked to, we do physician surveys about dose form preferences and how they believe patients respond. And we've heard from physicians a number of times that the color that dose forms end up with in certain patient populations can affect adherence, and really linked to ethnic subpopulations and first-generation immigrants. That also, by the way, plays in emerging economies too, as we've learned from some of our research. The other example I give is talking about reformulations, we've found that there are certain products that if you change how they're absorbed, pre-gastrically as one example, we've been able to take one product, deliver 90% less API, substantially reduce adverse event profiles, and achieve a consistent therapeutic effect. The point from that is It's also appealing to the product supply folks about minimizing the use of expensive API. And certainly adverse events reduction is always critical. That leads us to our view of a future state, a future desired state of drug delivery or drug design optimization to deliver the least amount of active of drug substance required to achieve differentiated real-world clinical outcomes. 3 elements there. The least amount of active is linked to safety, we believe, and can have cost and other benefits too. Differentiated clearly, if we look at a majority of studies, phase 3 pivotal studies published in the last 4 years, a few of those were comparator studies. And that's really what we hear over and over again payers are expecting. And real-world patient outcomes is not looking at adherence just in a clinical trial when you segregate the non-adherent patients, but actually understanding what they do in the wild, what they do in the real world. Now, what does that mean needs to change on our side? And I'm not going to talk in detail about each of these, but simplistically, earlier assessment of optimization opportunities to be able to predictively determine what's possible, not just trial and error design of experiment models, but actually get to an in silico way to say, how can we help you optimize so we don't take the time and cost the money that is one of the reasons people don't optimize as much as possible today. The last thing is clearly business models are going to need to change. Certainly a fee-for-service model in something like this may not work. A value-based partnership probably is more of a future direction. So my closing point here is I suggest that due to the aggressive payer behaviors, the 80% plus European volume that's paid for by single payer government entities, because of increased patient cost sharing in a challenged world, we can't afford not to pursue product outcomes innovation. And we on the technology side and product developers are in this together. We know what to do and we know how to do it. So we want to partner differently and help others partner differently to get to better outcomes for patients. So we think this is the next wave of drug delivery. So with that, thank you.
Thanks, Cornell. Dave Sebesta from Catalent Pharma Solutions.
No hard questions, Dave.
What's the receptivity across Catalent and more broadly in the industry to this change of fee for service to the value-based partnerships? And that was kind of the punchline of the presentation. How much progress are we really making on that, or is our competition making on that?
Sure. I think that it's linked to the effective use of technologies. So as we talked earlier, the shift in how technologies are deployed from pure life cycle management arbitrage to really getting to optimize how a compound works in patients, that as the way technologies use is changed, I think that's what creates the business model change. So in this case, does this mean that we as a company go completely, risk-based? No, I don't think anybody's expecting that. But we see opportunities every day where products can be improved. And if we can bring that value to our customers, we'd be willing to share some risk in exchange for some reward. So I think this is more of a perspective change. Remember, I'm strategy here, so not sales. So we think this is a change that needs to happen, and that's how the change will be financed. So,
thanks.
Sure. So don't sell it tomorrow.
Any more questions?
Hi, so I thought your presentation was excellent. I thought very interesting, and a lot of drug delivery companies are trying to get at that compliance issue and sort of gather that data, which would be very useful in their discussions with third-party payers and so forth. what, if you're looking across the landscape, and Catalent is an investor in drug, you're looking for acquisitions and so forth, you look across the landscape, is there any particular technology that you see would drastically improve the outcomes? Is it a device? Is it a formulation technology?
I think our preliminary conclusion so far is that every disease state's unique. And, while anything that simplifies complex regimens is probably good, we've also heard from doctors they don't want to go to a pure controlled release, model that doesn't allow for therapeutic flexibility. What we are going to actually be doing through the Institute is beginning a series of in-depth specialty surveys with advocacy groups and physicians and patient representatives to really understand unmet needs in each area and kind of work our way therapeutic category by therapeutic category through. We'll see after we're halfway through that journey whether there's some commonalities, but I think simplifying complex regimens is the theme. So.
Thank you very much.